Most people think intelligence is easy to recognize. It speaks first, answers quickly, wins debates, always has the perfect response, but the Sophia empath eventually discovers the most dangerous intelligence rarely announces itself. It listens, it observes, it waits, because the person who truly understands human nature has no reason to reveal everything they know. Carl Jung believed that every human being carries two identities, the one they proudly present to the world, and the one they spend their entire life trying to hide. Most people become fascinated by the mask. The Sophia empath quietly studies what the mask is protecting. That is where dark intelligence begins. Not in manipulation, in perception. There was a time when the Sophia empath believed honesty alone could protect them. If they remained kind, others would remain kind. If they remained loyal, others would value loyalty. If they understood people deeply enough, they would never have to fear deception. Reality answered differently. Slowly, they noticed something disturbing. The people who smiled the most were not always the most sincere. The people who spoke confidently were not always the most secure. The people who praised them publicly sometimes resented them privately. Different personalities, the same hidden conflict. Carl Jung believed that whatever remains unconscious will eventually reveal itself through behavior. Never through perfection, always through repetition. The Sophia empath stopped listening only to words. They began watching patterns. Who changes when power enters the room? Who becomes uncomfortable when someone else succeeds? Who suddenly grows distant the moment they can no longer control the conversation? Dark intelligence is born when observation becomes stronger than assumption. Manipulators rarely fear kind people. Kindness is predictable. Manipulators fear awareness, because awareness quietly destroys every strategy built upon confusion. People often think manipulation begins with lies. It doesn't. It begins the moment someone convinces you to doubt what you already noticed. The Sophia empath once ignored intuition to preserve peace. They questioned themselves instead of questioning repeated behavior. That single habit made manipulation possible. Then something changed. Not their heart, their perception. People don't resent your weakness. They resent the possibility that you might outgrow them. The Sophia empath finally understood that the greatest advantage was never seeing through people immediately. It was refusing to look away. Once they finally revealed themselves, and for those who survive by hiding behind carefully crafted masks, nothing is more dangerous than meeting someone whose intelligence quietly sees beyond appearances. The Sophia empath eventually begins noticing something that manipulative people hope no one ever learns. Control rarely begins with force, it begins with perception. The moment someone convinces you that your intuition cannot be trusted, they no longer need to control your decisions. You begin controlling yourself. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious always searches for the easiest path to influence, not through logic, through emotion, fear, guilt, approval, shame. The manipulator understands this instinctively, perhaps not consciously, but through repetition. They notice who apologizes too quickly, who explains too much, who becomes uncomfortable after saying no. Different behaviors, the same invisible invitation. The Sophia empath once believed these reactions were signs of kindness. Now, they recognize them as signals, not signals of weakness, signals of self-abandonment. That realization changes everything. Dark intelligence does not teach the Sophia empath how to manipulate people. It teaches them how manipulation quietly begins. Someone asks an innocent question, not to understand, to measure uncertainty. Someone gives a compliment, not to appreciate you. To discover how desperately you seek validation, someone shares a secret, not because they trust you, to see whether you will betray someone else's confidence. Small moments, almost invisible, yet each one quietly reveals character. Carl Jung believed that people project onto others the parts of themselves they cannot bear to face. The dishonest constantly suspect deception. The controlling constantly fear losing control. The insecure constantly search for signs of rejection. The Sophia empath begins recognizing these projections. Someone accuses them of being selfish simply because they protected a boundary. Someone calls them cold only after emotional manipulation stopped working. Someone suddenly questions their intentions the moment they refuse to be controlled. Different accusations, the same unconscious confession. People reveal themselves through what they repeatedly assume about others. Manipulators fear dark intelligence because it notices what performance cannot hide. It notices the smile that disappears when attention shifts away, the praise that quietly becomes criticism after success appears, the kindness that exists only while obedience remains. Most people watch conversations. The Sophia empath quietly watches contradictions, and contradictions always tell the truth because words can be rehearsed. Behavior rarely can. That is why the manipulator becomes uneasy, not because the Sophia empath speaks brilliantly, because they stop reacting predictably. And the moment someone can no longer predict your emotions, they quietly lose the ability to control your reality. The Sophia empath slowly realizes that manipulation almost never feels like manipulation. If it did, no one would fall for it. It arrives wearing familiar faces, concern, affection, guidance, protection. Carl Jung believed that the shadow rarely introduces itself as darkness. It often appears disguised as virtue. That is why the Sophia empath once confused control with care. Someone insisted on knowing where they were. It sounded like concern. Someone questioned every decision they made. It sounded like guidance. Someone became upset every time boundaries appeared. It sounded like love. Different situations, the same hidden motive. Dark intelligence begins the moment appearances lose their authority. The Sophia empath stops asking, "What are they saying?" and quietly begins asking, "What does this behavior consistently create?" Because every repeated behavior has a destination. Some create trust, others quietly create dependence. Manipulators understand something most people overlook. The person who depends on your approval can be controlled through rejection. The person who fears disappointing others can be controlled through guilt. The person who constantly explains themselves can be controlled through doubt. Different emotions, the same invisible chain. People don't become prisoners because someone locks the door. They become prisoners when they begin guarding the cage themselves. The Sophia empath suddenly recognizes how often they apologized simply to intention, how often they accepted blame to preserve harmony, how often they abandoned intuition because someone sounded more confident. That was never kindness. It was unconscious surrender. Carl Jung believed that consciousness begins the moment you separate facts from emotional pressure. That separation changes everything. The manipulator says, "If you really cared, you would do this." The Sophia empath quietly asks, "Is this love or emotional leverage?" The manipulator says, "You're overthinking." The Sophia empath asks, "Or are you uncomfortable because I finally started thinking?" The manipulator says, "You've changed." The Sophia empath silently notices that the accusation only appeared after control disappeared. Most people listen for honesty. Dark intelligence listens for motive, because motives survive long after beautiful words disappear. People often fear being judged. Manipulators fear being understood. And perhaps that is why the Sophia empath becomes so difficult to influence. Not because they learned new psychological tricks, because they finally stopped arguing with the quiet evidence that repeated behavior had been revealing from the very beginning. The Sophia empath eventually discovers that the greatest advantage of dark intelligence is not reading other people. It is recognizing when your own emotions are being used against you. For years, they believed every strong emotional reaction deserved an immediate response, a painful message, an unexpected accusation, a sudden withdrawal of affection. Everything felt urgent. Everything demanded attention. Carl Jung believed that whatever controls your emotions quietly begins controlling your choices. The Sophia empath finally understood that urgency is one of manipulation's favorite disguises. Answer me now. Decide today. If you cared, you wouldn't need time. Different words, the same psychological pressure. Dark intelligence quietly refuses to hurry, not because it becomes cold, because it understands something most people overlook. Truth survives patience. Manipulation rarely does. The Sophia empath begins noticing a fascinating pattern. The moment they stop reacting immediately, people begin revealing far more than they intended. The manipulator grows impatient. The liar begins over-explaining. The controller starts making demands. The insecure person desperately searches for reassurance. Silence changes everyone differently, and that difference exposes character. People often believe intelligence is measured by how quickly someone answers. Dark intelligence measures something else: how long someone can observe before emotion interrupts perception. That single ability changes every relationship. Carl Jung believed that the unconscious always resists awareness. The moment hidden motives become visible, they lose much of their influence. That is why manipulators rarely attack your logic first. They attack your certainty. They make you question your memory, your intentions, your instincts, until your own mind begins arguing against itself. The Sophia empath once lived inside that confusion. Now, they quietly ask a different question. What pattern keeps repeating? Not, what excuse explains this? Because excuses protect comfort. Patterns reveal reality. Most relationships don't end when respect disappears. They end when awareness appears. The Sophia empath no longer searches for perfect people. They search for consistent people. The ones whose words, their actions, and their values quietly move in the same direction. Those people are rare, but they exist. And because they exist, the Sophia empath no longer wastes years trying to transform those who repeatedly choose deception over honesty. Perhaps that is why manipulators fear a Sophia empath's dark intelligence. Not because the Sophia empath exposes them to the world, but because they quietly stop believing the performance. And the moment a performance loses its audience, the illusion begins collapsing on its own. The Sophia empath eventually realizes that the most dangerous manipulators are not the loudest ones. They rarely threaten. They rarely shout. They rarely expose themselves too early. Instead, they become exactly what you need them to be. Carl Jung believed that the persona is designed to gain acceptance. It adapts, it imitates, it performs. The manipulator understands this, whether consciously or not. They study your values, your fears, your loneliness, your desire to be understood. Then they quietly become the answer to every emotional question you've been asking. The Sophia empath once believed this was destiny. Meeting someone who understood them so completely felt almost miraculous. But dark intelligence notices something strange. Real connection develops slowly. Manipulation often feels immediate. The faster someone creates emotional certainty, the more carefully the Sophia empath begins observing. Because trust built overnight usually disappears just as quickly, people often mistake intensity for sincerity. they are rarely the same thing. The manipulator mirrors your beliefs, laughs at your jokes, shares your opinions, agrees with your dreams, not because they have discovered themselves, because they are discovering you. Every reaction becomes information. Every confession becomes strategy. Every insecurity quietly becomes a future pressure point. The Sophia empath begins asking a different question. Not, why do they understand me so well? But, have they revealed themselves, or have they only been reflecting me? That single question changes everything. Carl Jung believed that projection creates the illusion of perfect understanding. Sometimes you are not seeing another person's soul, you are seeing your own hopes, reflected back at you. The Sophia empath once fell in love with possibilities. Now, they patiently wait for consistency, because consistency cannot be performed forever. Sooner or later, every mask grows heavy. Every performance becomes exhausting. Every hidden motive begins leaking through ordinary moments. The unnecessary jealousy, the subtle criticism disguised as advice, the kindness that quietly disappears, the moment obedience does. Different behaviors, the same unconscious pattern. People don't always reveal themselves through what they give. Sometimes they reveal themselves through what they cannot stop taking. Attention, control, validation, emotional certainty. And perhaps that is why manipulators fear a Sophia empath's dark intelligence. Not because the Sophia empath has become suspicious of everyone, because they have become patient enough to let time separate authenticity from performance. And time has a habit of exposing what charm was never able to hide. The Sophia empath eventually reaches a realization that changes every relationship forever. Not everyone wants peace. Some people only want power. To an unconscious mind, control feels safer than connection. Carl Jung believed that whatever a person refuses to face within themselves, they will unconsciously seek to dominate outside themselves. Someone who cannot control their own fears tries to control other people. Someone who cannot regulate their own emotions tries to regulate yours. Someone who feels powerless inside quietly searches for someone easier to overpower. Different personalities, the same hidden hunger. The Sophia empath used to interpret this behavior as emotional pain, and sometimes it truly was. But pain does not automatically create innocence. Many people who have been hurt eventually heal. Others learn how to make sure they are never the vulnerable one again. That is where manipulation is born, not from strength, from unhealed fear. The Sophia empath no longer confuses someone's wounds with their character, because wounds explain behavior. They do not excuse repeated harm. People often believe empathy means understanding everyone. Dark intelligence understands something deeper. You can understand someone's suffering without volunteering to become part of it. That distinction saves years of unnecessary pain. The manipulator notices something unsettling. Their usual methods no longer work. Guilt receives no immediate apology. Silence receives no anxious explanation. Criticism receives quiet observation instead of emotional collapse. The Sophia empath has not become heartless. They have become conscious. And consciousness quietly dismantles every illusion built on emotional dependency. People don't fear intelligence because it is smarter. They fear it because it refuses to participate in comfortable lies. Carl Jung believed that individuation begins the moment a person stops living through borrowed expectations. The Sophia empath slowly releases the need to be liked by everyone, to be understood by everyone, to be chosen by everyone, because they finally recognize that acceptance purchased through self-betrayal is simply another form of loneliness. The greatest shift is almost invisible. The Sophia empath still listens, still forgives, still cares, but they no longer sacrifice reality to preserve someone's image. And that is exactly when manipulators begin to panic, because the person who once ignored every red flag now quietly notices the smallest contradiction. The person who once searched for excuses now searches for patterns. The person who once doubted themselves first now calmly trusts what repeated behavior continues to reveal. Dark intelligence is not the ability to expose every deception. It is the discipline to stop deceiving yourself. The Sophia empath eventually understands that the final battle was never with manipulators. It was with the version of themselves that kept believing every relationship could be saved. For a long time, they carried an impossible responsibility. If I become more patient, they will change. If I explain myself one more time, they will finally understand. If I love them deeply enough, they will stop hurting me. But reality follows a colder law. People only change when the cost of remaining the same becomes greater than the comfort of their habits. No amount of compassion can awaken someone committed to staying asleep. Carl Jung believed that the greatest illusion of the conscious mind is believing it can rescue another person from an unconscious life. It cannot. Awareness can be offered. It cannot be forced. The Sophia empath slowly releases the need to rescue everyone they meet, because they finally realize some people don't want healing. They want access to your attention, your patience, your emotional energy, your endless willingness to understand different desires, the same quiet consumption. There is something unsettling about a person who no longer needs approval. Manipulators immediately notice it, because approval is one of the easiest currencies to exploit. Offer a little acceptance, and many people will trade away their boundaries. Offer a little affection, and many will ignore obvious disrespect. Offer hope, and they will postpone reality. The Sophia empath used to negotiate with reality. Now, they negotiate only with truth, even when the truth hurts, especially when it hurts, because temporary pain is far less expensive than permanent self-deception. People think confidence comes from believing in yourself. Dark intelligence knows confidence comes from no longer abandoning yourself. That difference changes everything. Someone becomes angry. The Sophia empath doesn't panic. Someone withdraws affection. They don't chase. Someone attempts to create guilt. They quietly examine whether the guilt actually belongs to them. Emotional storms no longer dictate their direction. They simply reveal who is trying to steer the ship. People reveal their character, not when life is easy, but when they realize they can no longer control yours. That moment is impossible to fake. The smile fades, the patience disappears, the respect suddenly becomes resentment. Not because you became different, because you became unavailable to manipulation. And perhaps this is the deepest reason manipulators fear a Sophia empath's dark intelligence. It isn't because they expose every lie. It is because they quietly become someone whose mind can no longer be occupied by illusion. When that happens, control has nowhere left to grow. The shadow loses its hiding place, and human nature finally reveals itself exactly as it is.